Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda and I am here to wrap up my big book summer. I have done this for several years with Sue, and this year became a big deal for Sue, so that's great. And I got my little notebook so I can keep track in here from year to year, the big books I read. So I thought I was going to run through what I did read that qualified this year. I'm just going to put the pictures up because I no longer have some of the books, and some of them they were ebooks or I got them from the library, and some are kind of in piles and they're hard to get to. So I'm just going to put them all up here. So also, I probably listened to some audiobooks that would qualify, but I'm not counting them because they were nonfiction books. So if I look it up, it says they qualify, but there's always like notes and things like that. So I wasn't really sure. So I'm just not counting those audiobooks. If I knew for sure that the text was over 400 pages, I'd count it. But because I couldn't really tell, I'm just not counting those. Also, I am only counting books that I began since Memorial Day, because I did have one book, The Red Convertible by Louise Erdrich, which would have qualified, except I started it in like March. It's a short story collection, so I didn't count that. So that being said, I read 7 big books this year, which probably isn't as many as I usually do, but that's okay. Let me tell you what I did. The first one was Disillusion by C.J. Sansom. So this is the first in his Shard Lake series. I had heard from a number of people that this was good, and there was an adaptation that had just come out. So, and it's like medieval England, Tudor England. It's my thing. It's my jam, guys. And so I said, I'm going to give it a try. And this was the one that I had ordered from Blackwell's, and it was like trade paperback size, but when I got it, it was really like mass market paperback. It was this in trade paperback. It was weird. So I have distributed that book elsewhere, even though I actually did like the book. It's a pretty strong mystery. There were a few issues with it, but it was interestingly enough, and I was pulled into it enough to continue to read the series. So now I'm just waiting for the second book to come in from the library. But yeah, it's a pretty strong mystery. Really the strength of Matthew Shardlake was pretty, I thought he was a really interesting character. So yeah, and I thought the historical quality was really strong. Like he had the details right. He brought the world to life. And that's really what I appreciated in historical fiction. And there's still a strong mystery. So that was my first one. After that, and I did this as a buddy read, I read The Wives by Simone Garindo. So this is a memoir of an army wife. She's a little unique in that her husband joined the army later. So she was already, I think she already had a master's degree, and she had lived on it. She had a life in New York and everything. She left it all to move to Fort Benning, Georgia. I think that's where he was. For her husband to join the army. And I found it really interesting. I did this as a buddy read with Kim at Kim's Book Life and Angela at Andy Hart's Books. I don't think either of them have a channel, but they comment, so you'll see them in comments. And they are both former army wives, so we had great discussions about it. I would keep this book, except it's a book I think my nieces would really like, so I'm passing it on to them. But it was good. My only issue with it, there's a couple things where I didn't think she was very self-aware, but whatever. I have definitely read memoirs that were worse than that in that regard. I thought this one was pretty strong. After that was my 5-star read, and this was Red Rabbit by Alex Grecian. This is a horror / Western, so it was also June on the Range. I really enjoyed it, which is, I like witchy stuff. I thought it was strong. It really kept me going. Like I could not put the book down. It was, oh, by the way, I forgot to say, The Wives was 400 pages, Disillusion was 439, and Red Rabbit's 454. I really enjoyed it. I know that Sarah Roadworthy just listened to it. She didn't like it as much. I might just be special in my love for this book. I don't know. I just thought this was so much fun. It was a really enjoyable, suspenseful reading experience for me. So there you go. And those are the ones I read in June. So now we're going to move into July. So I read 3 in June, 3 in July. I finished 3 in June, 3 in July, and 1 in August. My first book in July was The Dovekeepers by Alice Hoffman. This is actually my longest big book. It's 514 pages. This is in Alice Hoffman's backlist, and which I'm working through. This is a really hard book to read. So I started this book on June 1st, and I finished it July. So it took me a whole month to read. And I did have to put it down at times because the subject matter was so hard. But it is very good. And it's about the siege at Masada, and it features on like three women who were in Masada at the time, and tells their stories. And it has Alice Hoffman's, I don't know if you'd say magical realism, but she has that sort of, that extra element to religion there. Hoffman herself is Jewish, so she's writing about her own religion. And this is much more, it's not like Judaism, it's not like modern Judaism. And when I say modern, I mean from like now. I'm not saying Orthodox, conservative, I'm just saying modern. This is much more like, a lot of the elements in this are things that people might categorize as pagan. Put that out there. I guess that's probably the best way to describe it. Fascinating book, beautifully written, but it is kind of a hard read. After that, I read by Hazel Gaynor, The Girl from the Seavoy. So this was on my Do Not Destruct list, so I did get that one read. And this is set in 1920s London about a maid who wants to become a star. I have read Hazel Gaynor before, and I've had success with her. This is probably not my favorite Hazel Gaynor book, honestly. There were some things in it that didn't quite work, but it was enjoyable enough. It was a fine way to pass the time. They say it's 416 pages. So yeah, it was, if you want sort of a lighter historical fiction, Hazel Gaynor is a good choice. And then I had The God of the Woods, like everybody else this summer. And this was 476 pages. This is a literary mystery set at a summer camp in the Adirondacks. I found it very strong. My only complaint about it is there was one little hanging plot thread that I didn't think wove in well with the rest of the story. Other than that, it was perfection. I thought it was really well done. I was surprised by the ending, most of the ending. So yeah, definitely Liz Moore. She hit a home run with this one. And then my final book was one I just recently finished. And it's not my only because I had a memoir, but it's my Historathon third quarter book. And this is Young Queens, 3 Renaissance Women and the Price of Power by Leah Redmond Chang. And this is about Catherine de' Medici, Elizabeth of Valois, who was her daughter, and Mary Queen of Scots, who was her daughter-in-law. And they all were queens. Catherine de' Medici was a queen of England, and then a dowager queen and a regent of, France. Elizabeth of Valois, her daughter, was married to Philip II of Spain, so she was Queen of Spain. And then Mary Queen of Scots is, she was Queen of France briefly, and then she was the Queen of Scots in her own right. And I already knew about Mary Queen of Scots. I didn't learn anything new about that, and that's fine. But I learned a lot about Catherine de' Medici, so I really enjoyed this book. I had a little problem with some things at the end, but not a deal breaker. So yeah, so those were my 7 big books. And I just got this notebook this year. So I put my little bookmark in the back for next year. I'm going to go put this on my shelf. So next year I will pull this out and we can start and see what I read in 2025. And if you did not participate in Big Book Summer this year and you are interested in doing it next year, I can tell you right now, it runs from Memorial Day weekend to Labor Day weekend. So you know when that starts. And if you aren't in the US, you don't know what that is. Memorial Day weekend is the last weekend in May, and Labor Day weekend is the first full weekend. Is it always the first full weekend? No, because this wasn't a full weekend this year. It's the first weekend in September. So, basically June, July, August. And there will be a lot. It really took off this year on booktube, so a lot of people participated in it. You will hear about it. And I will also tag Sue, who runs it, down below, and I will include the channel to her wrap up, which was the one that reminded me I had to wrap mine up. So thank you very much. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.